Our top story this morning, all eyes on Prime Minister Modi's UNGA address. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached New York, where he is scheduled to address the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. He will be addressing the UNGA at 6:30 p.m. this evening. Indian diaspora welcomed Prime Minister Modi and chanted Vande Mataram and Bharat Mata Ki Jai outside the hotel where he is staying in New York. The Prime Minister is expected to raise the issue of terrorism, highlight India's contribution to the world during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Afghanistan crisis, vaccine export, among other issues. He will leave for India after his UNGA address at 9:15 this evening. Prime Minister Modi held his first bilateral meeting with US President Joe Biden and attended the Quad Summit as well. He also met Vice President Kamala Harris in Washington, D.C.
Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be the first speaker of the day. It is going to be a significant and an important speech. He was to come to the United States of America for the quadrilateral and the bilateral meeting with President Biden, and is the reason why he decided to go to the UNGA and address the assembly. The focus will remain COVID-19, climate change and conflict. These are three important areas that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has focused on in the recent past, and he's going to continue doing that even this time around. The withdrawal of the US forces from Afghanistan is critical when it comes to security in the region. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will speak of how there needs to be inclusivity, that democracy should be respected and honored, but also the fact that in a post-COVID world, the entire world and community has to come together. We've seen a lot of leaders before him who've come and spoken about COVID-19 recovery and vaccines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to talk about the role India played in ensuring that countries that could not afford or that could not avail health services, or that India came to their assistance, but also will direct his attack against those who are now indulging in vaccine racism. Vaccine equity is something that will be a key and focus area, because United Nations is a forum, is a body that is going to look at that aspect. Apart from that, terrorism, counter-terrorism, without naming any country, talking about aggressive posturing, aggression, all that will be focus of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech this time around at the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly.
The first ever Quad in-person meet was held at Washington, D.C., hosted by US President Joe Biden. The leaders of the four-nation Quad, Prime Minister Modi, US President Joe Biden, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, discussed key challenges that are being faced by the world. Without naming China, all four leaders sought open Indo-Pacific trade and even better cooperation in the region. India today has learned that all four countries were very critical of China. Prime Minister Modi even raised the issue of clean app movement aimed at training in Chinese app menace, and the issue found resonance with the US, Australia and Japan. Prime Minister Modi also added that the Quad will ensure peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region and would act as a force for global good. US President Biden said Quad is a grouping of democratic partners who share a worldview and have a common view for the future and will take on key challenges of our times. The four-nation Quad grouping also discussed the current situation in Afghanistan. Other issues like COVID management, vaccine partnership, 8 million doses of biological E and Johnson & Johnson vaccines for the Quad pool also found a mention in the meet, along with common international COVID protocols for travelers.
हमारा क्वाड एक तरह से फोर्स फॉर ग्लोबल गुड की भूमिका में काम करेगा। मुझे विश्वास है क्वाड में हमारा सहयोग इंडो पैसिफिक में और विश्व में शांति और समृद्धि सुनिश्चित करेगा। आज जब विश्व कोविड-19 पैंडेमिक से मुकाबला कर रहा है, तो क्वाड के रूप में हम एक बार फिर मिलकर मानवता के हित में जुटे हैं। हमारा क्वाड वैक्सीन इनिशिएटिव इंडो पैसिफिक देशों की बड़ी मदद करेगा। हमारा क्वाड एक तरह से फोर्स फॉर ग्लोबल गुड की भूमिका में काम करेगा। मुझे विश्वास है क्वाड में हमारा सहयोग इंडो पैसिफिक में और विश्व में शांति और समृद्धि सुनिश्चित करेगा।
We are looking at fairly strong language with regard to the Quad's commitment on terrorism and the need to counter terrorism anywhere in the world. It reinforces the Quad's thinking on this issue and the need to combine efforts to deal with this common scourge. Also, with regard to Afghanistan, again, there is similar language, especially with the main points of Resolution 2595 mentioned therein.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Joe Biden's meet at the White House was full of laughter and light moments as well. Both the leaders shared warm embrace, hinting towards a personal friendship. Let's see the special report.
The moment the two leaders met, President Biden with his arms outstretched and Prime Minister Modi in a warm namaste. Hands held, the two exchanged their first words.
Chair.
And then, after a few light moments and jokes,
I've never been able to track it down, so the whole purpose of this meeting is for him to help me figure out.
a picture for the books. Modi and Biden's true mojo moment in a brief embrace tempered by COVID protocols. Speculation had hit fever pitch about just what kind of chemistry the two leaders would have. And while those decoding the body language inside the White House will have their work cut out, it was, at the very least, warm, cordial, and full of possibilities. And it's impossible not to compare, considering just how in-your-face body language has always been on Modi's foreign visits. Like the hug-plomacy that Modi triggered with President Obama, and then the explosive chemistry the Indian Prime Minister shared with President Trump. And finally, owing to COVID-imposed masks and distancing norms, a partial but no less genial hug with the current US president.
If the body language is right, it's half the battle won in diplomacy. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Biden met very warmly, although the bear hug was missing between the two leaders, not because they didn't want to, there was even an attempt, but it was because COVID-19 rules and restrictions were not to be violated. The two leaders were also very warm in terms of remembering and appreciating each other and each other's work, and that really came across in the visuals that you see of the two leaders.
Diplomats and experts will tell you that body language isn't cosmetic, but is in fact of huge importance in relations between countries. Mutual friendliness and chemistry goes a long way in opening doors to joint decisions, and is frequently a catalyst for synergies that are otherwise difficult to push. As Modi and Biden begin a new journey for the two nations, 1 billion Indians and 4 million Indian Americans will be watching every step. Bureau Report, India Today.
Ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech at the United Nations General Assembly, Pakistan tried to spread propaganda about Jammu and Kashmir and against India. Imran Khan, in a series of lies, mentioned alleged illegal activities and unilateral measures in Jammu and Kashmir and said that atrocities were inflicted on minorities in India. Giving a befitting reply to the Pakistan Prime Minister, India's First Secretary Sneha Dubey exposed Pakistan's lies. Dubey, in her reply, said that the platform provided by the United Nations was used to propagate falsehood and malicious propaganda against India to divert the world's attention from the sad state of affairs in Pakistan, where terrorists enjoy a free pass. She also reiterated that Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh were, are and will always be integral parts of India. She added that Pakistan has a history of backing and funding terrorists as part of its state policy.
Islamophobia is another pernicious phenomena that we all need to collectively combat. In the aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, terrorism has been associated with Islam by some quarters. This has increased the tendency of right-wing, xenophobic and violent nationalist, extremists and terrorist groups to target Muslims. I call on the Secretary General to convene a global dialogue on countering the rise of Islamophobia.
We heard the leader of Pakistan trying to justify acts of terror. Such defense of terrorism is unacceptable in the modern world. We keep hearing that Pakistan is a victim of terrorism. This is the country which is an arsonist disguising itself as a firefighter. Pakistan nurtures terrorists in their backyard in the hope that they will only harm their neighbors.
New Delhi has also embarked on what it ominously calls the final solution for Jammu and Kashmir dispute. It has undertaken a series of illegal and unilateral measures in occupied Jammu and Kashmir since 5th August 2019. Sustainable peace in South Asia is contingent upon resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions and the wishes of the Kashmiri people.
The entire union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh were, are, and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. This includes the areas that are under the illegal occupation of Pakistan. We call upon Pakistan to immediately vacate all areas under its illegal occupation.
It has undertaken a series of illegal and unilateral measures in occupied Jammu and Kashmir since 5th August 2019. Indian actions violate the resolutions of the United Nations Security Council on Jammu and Kashmir.
This is not the first time the leader of Pakistan has misused platforms provided by the UN to propagate false and malicious propaganda against my country, and seeking in vain to divert the world's attention from the sad state of his country, where terrorists enjoy free pass, while the lives of ordinary people, especially those belonging to the minority communities, are turned upside down.